Today on the World Triathlon podcast, we get to hear from the USA's Erika Ackerlund. Erika has been a regular face on the World Cup circuit since 2018 and made the step up to the series in 2020, since when 2 excellent seasons have seen the 26-year-old establish herself as a key part of the new era in American triathlon, even as some of its more established stars return to the fray. She shared her first start of 2023 in New Plymouth with one of those, Gwen Jorgensen, and a 7th place finish will have been a strong foundation for the year ahead. So Erika, welcome to the podcast. How are you and where are you?
Hi, thank you. I am good. I'm in Boulder, Colorado right now, like most of our US team. Just like a week out from the New Plymouth World Cup, so getting back to training now.
Yeah, nice. How many of you from there were there in New Plymouth then? You come from
6 girls came back here to train for the New Plymouth World Cup. At least 6, yeah.
Including Gwen, right? Is she based there? Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
in New Zealand for a while before, wasn't she? But yeah. Was that have you crossed paths previously in Boulder, or was that the first time sharing a start line, presumably? But
it was definitely the first time I've raced with her because, I think she retired before I even did my first Conti Cup. But I have met her here. Yeah, I actually ran into her on a bike ride, and said hello. And then we actually did a long ride together a couple weeks back. So, but then she took off to New Zealand. She went a while ahead of the rest of us. So yeah, we'll see. I might do some more training with her. We'll see.
Well, I should imagine in a way, coming back after that length of time is not dissimilar to when you kind of start out those first few World Cups, right? And that way, and everything's a little bit kind of green and weird. And
yeah, for sure. I think, to be honest, having won as many races as she did, I'm sure she would love to come back and win. But I was like, that's actually a pretty good first try back after so long. I felt like,
obviously want to go into your kind of formative years as well. Your kind of trajectory's been a pretty interesting one into the top tier as well, and you've been doing plenty of articles for Slow Twitch, which have been very interesting to read, and obviously opened up some interesting conversations around mental health and so on. So it will be good to talk about those. But yeah, I mean, let's start in New Plymouth. You finished 7th. That was your first start of 23. So pretty happy with how that was and putting things into place from the off season.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very another consistent race. So I'm always very consistent. I think my swim was a little further back than I would hope in a World Cup, but I had a really good transition one onto the bike and made up a ton of time there, which kind of having those skills is really helpful for racing. So yeah, overall it was a solid race.
You talked about your consistency as in a slightly where's your if you were working on your magic bullet, say, for 2023, what are you trying to kind of bolt on that can tick things up to that podium, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's any one thing for me, because I think across swim, bike, and run, I'm surprisingly very even. So it's really just kind of continuing to train all 3 and, a little bit more fitness across the board. I think the run is kind of that final piece you need in the end. So hopefully that keeps coming along. I do feel like I've made some progress over the last years. Yeah.
Does it a fair amount of it for where you are now? Is it a bit of patience as well, and putting in the volume and just kind of keeping those building blocks coming in? And
yeah, I think so. Sometimes I'll look back at other people's histories and, we just see the wins, but it does take a fair bit of time to make your way there, even for some of the best people. So, just trying to be patient and see the gains that you are making. Really, I do think I've made quite a lot of progress over the last years, and just try to remember that even when the team's so good and there's still so much further that I'd love to go,
I guess, one of the things I wanted to ask you about in terms of your trajectory and so on, you said 2016 was as Gwen was retiring, you were kind of just getting started. Abu Dhabi was actually your first championship finals as well, wasn't it, last year?
Yeah.
Sophie Coldwell, when we were in Abu Dhabi last month, was talking about her kind of how she's basically competed at every single step of the rung to where she is now, and like, you know, that silver was obviously like a career best, and you know, she's looking back on racing since the age of 8. For you, I guess, yeah, kind of growing up in Montana and so on, and coming to triathlon quite late. I don't know. Do you feel you can use that to your advantage now? Do you sort of look back and think, oh, I wish I'd kind of got into it a little bit earlier? Or
Yeah. I'm not sure. Like, so growing up, I definitely had, like, I had a swim coach that he was like always trying to push me to swim more often. He's like, we can like do swimming and running at the same time. And, you know, I really just did like high school swimming season, high school running season. You know, I do a couple months a year. Did a little bit of like a mountain bike club, which I loved, but, you know, I think maybe we went out 10 times a year. So yeah, I didn't do a ton of it. And sometimes I wonder, like, where would I be now if I had put in like some of the miles that I hear other people have done when they were younger. But then at the same time, like, we have so long in sport, and, you know, there's women racing 35 and older, you know, and they're at the top, and it takes a lot of time. So I don't know if I would have like the love to train as hard as I do and want to do that for, you know, the next 10 plus years if I had done so much when I was young. So I think, yeah, like, we still have so much room to grow. And as we get older as women, we, you know, we have a long time left to still push really hard and be at the top of the game. So I don't, like, whilst I maybe think it may have held me back a little at the start, like, in the end, I don't think that's going to be like to my detriment that I didn't start sooner. I think I still have so many more years to train. But yeah, like, similar to Sophie Caldwell, I'm very much like, I did the Conti Cups, I did the World Cups, now I'm getting into the World Triathlon Series, and kind of very slowly like made my way up through each of those levels and tried to really perform well at each level consistently before I jumped up to the next one. Yeah.
And growing up in Montana, right, in a pretty, is it, no, St. Helens? No, what was the town that you?
Helena is where I'm from.
Helena, sorry, right, which is actually like the capital of Montana state, right?
Yep.
But it's still only like a town of 30,000 people.
Yeah, it's small. Yeah.
Yeah.
To be honest, there's not that many big cities in Montana. So it's a very rural state in general. So
yeah. So I mean, yeah, you know, did you have a kind of what you would consider kind of an idyllic small town US kind of growing up? Yeah, it's like it's a pretty rural northwest US state, right? For those that don't necessarily know it. But I mean,
yeah,
stunning, beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was definitely loved sports and stuff, but wasn't doing it at an elite level per se. And yeah, pretty normal. Well, normal. I don't know what's normal, but standard childhood in Montana for me, I guess. When I was younger, I actually really wanted to get into rodeo and horseback riding and stuff. My parents weren't quite as excited, but yeah, I took some horse riding lessons for a while, did some rodeo camps in the summer, loved that. And we would
actually define the rodeo. Sorry to go off, but what is rodeo like? I mean, apart from
what is rodeo?
Yeah,
yeah, I'm from Montana. Yeah, so in the summers, like, every town kind of has like their rodeo in the summer, and you'll go watch. So, people, you know, they ride, bulls, bulls. So I was a little kid, so I rode steers, like the baby bull. Right. Wouldn't stay on for long at all. You do poles and barrel racing on horses. And there's the people riding like the horses that are bucking like crazy and stuff, trying to stay on.
That's what I was thinking, more horses than the bulls, yeah. But
yeah.
Is that
I know, and there's a West Yellowstone. That's a national park, huge geyser, very cool to see if anyone wants to go. But yeah, right outside there, I would go to rodeo camp, and any tourists could come watch us put on a rodeo.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. To do that. And my family was extremely active. So, like I spent tons of time in the mountains, hiking, backpacking, camping, you name it.
So there was a gentle campaign from your mum, was there, to kind of steer you but away from the rodeo and maybe into something a bit more.
Oh, for sure. For sure. My mom absolutely loves triathlon. Like she would come to every race if she could. Loves following sports. So yeah.
So that, I mean, I've seen you talk about your kind of capacity for endurance sport and so on. So if you weren't really kind of doing, as you said, like all that much in one go, there was some swimming there and some running and a bit of riding and so on. So yeah, is that just realizing that you would maybe doing those sessions and still had more to give, or how were you kind of coming to the realization that you had this kind of capacity for pushing yourself?
Yeah. I always, like I say, I didn't do a lot of sport, but I did have a fair bit of success with most of what I tried, to be honest, for like, given the amount of time that I put into it. And when I went to college, I stayed in state, followed academic scholarships to college. And I was like a little bit bummed because I'd wanted to go do some like Division III swimming or something like that to kind of, I was still interested in sports. And my mom knew about the triathlon club at the University of Montana where I went. And she was like, you should really try that out. So I just joined it thinking it would be a like fun hobby thing that I did while in college, and then got way more into it than expected. But yeah, I mean, when I first saw like how much training triathletes do, I was like, like 12 hours a week. I don't know if I can do that, So it took a little bit of time for me to get into it. But I just realized, like, I went to a couple races and I was like, yeah, I can kind of swim, bike, and run back to back pretty well, I think I'm different from other people where putting the 3 back to back isn't a huge struggle for me. I have very good endurance, so it's more getting really fast at each individual one, and then it'll come together in the race for me when I can do that.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess it's what's considered a lot, but 12 hours when you were studying and everything, that was tricky to kind of fit that into the.
Oh yeah, the first time I saw that, I was like, now I train double or more.
Yeah. Well, what were you studying at the time?
So I actually studied exercise science.
All right.
I first went biology kind of, and then found out exercise science is something you can study. And I loved just studying like the human body and kind of the more macro stuff that you can see a little bit more. So really loved that, to be honest.
Yeah. It was the U23s in Rotterdam that was your first kind of big international event, right?
Yeah, that was like, I remember partway through the year kind of calling up my coach and being like, do you think there's any chance I could go to the U23 World Championships? Felt like such a big thing. And she was like, yeah, like, I actually think that you can, and I think we can get there. I was so excited. And that it's a huge trip, and I was in school at the time, so like that kind of cut into like the school season again. So I was, taking a week off of classes and stuff to go out there. My mom came with me to that one because it was my very first one, and really had no idea what to expect. And I felt like I was in very good shape, and I woke up that morning completely sick. It wasn't food poisoning because then my roommate got it the next day, but at the time we thought it was food poisoning. So, similar symptoms.
Right.
Very sick. Tried to start the race because, of course I was going to try, but didn't even finish the race. And that was a crazy conditions race too. It was so wet and so windy, and really haven't had an experience like that again, thankfully, though.
No, I guess there's good and bad to be found in that being your first experience, right? There's like, again, back to that thing of everyone's formative paths through being so very different, and like fate conspired to mean that your first championship finals wasn't until last year, right? And there'd be plenty that would have been able to kind of tick through a few a few early on, or even have a home race. In fact, I suppose if you look at like New Plymouth, the Kiwis absolutely smashed the podiums in the men's and the women's races, right?
Gosh, yeah.
And I don't know, does that leave you kind of wishing a little bit that there were more races on that kind of level within the States? That I'm not putting it just down to that, but you got Ainsley Thorpe in a career best, and Nicole, I think as well, right? Hadn't won a World Cup before that, I don't think so.
I think so.
There is a lot to be said for that home racing, and you got to go back to like 2018 for the Sarasota World Cup, and that was switched to duathlon because just difficult race conditions. 2015 for the previous Chicago series. I would absolutely love to have home races like that. Like I was just reminded of it in New Zealand. Like we were racing, and I'm just, I know everyone on the circuit now, so when I'm with them in a race, like I kind of know what to expect out of everyone. And I don't know if it was me being early season. The Kiwis have been racing for a little while in New Zealand, but I really felt like they were performing throughout the race, like at a notch higher than they usually are. And they're always great, not to say they're not great. But yeah, I really felt like they felt that home crowd, and I would love to have that kind of experience. We were on a phone call with some USAT earlier this year, and I was kind of recalling the story of last year in Leeds as well, like another similar event where, the UK really gets around the race. And in that particular one, I actually didn't have a great race there. It was kind of a little bit behind the main group the whole way, working very hard. And I was racing right next to Kate Woff, like the whole race. And she, like, people were just cheering for her. I swear, the entire race, all I heard was like, "Go Kate, let's go Kate." And I was just like, this is so cool. Like, we're at the back of the race, and they're still just like so pumped to see her come by. And I would so love to have that in the US. I think it's harder with a big country because even like we have Sarasota, but every fan can't travel to Sarasota to watch. So yeah, we need to find a place where we can really get like a core group of people and bring it back year to year. I would love that. I think most of us would. Yeah. Boulder, right? I mean,
yeah, we'll have the first altitude race.
So was it in this closed season that you were able to use the kind of not high performance center, but the Olympic, like the center in Boulder? You did a couple of posts about kind of the facilities you were able to get to grips with out there and so on.
Yeah, in Colorado Springs, we have the Olympic Training Center, which is a little under 2-hour drive from Boulder. And so last year, I actually lived there for a couple of weeks towards the end of the year. Really made use of the facility. So you can come, there's dorms you can stay in. There's a dining hall, eat all you want all day long. The pool's amazing. Yeah. So last year was my first year on the national team. And then this year, we kind of went to a camp and we did some like testing at the start of this year. I didn't actually do this particular one, but like some running shoe testing. If you wanted to try out various shoes, sweat rate stuff, basic like VO2 max lactate threshold testing. Yeah. So it's really cool to have that so close. And I think it is part of the reason that Boulder is so big is because, you need some medical attention. You want to get a quick MRI. You can head down there and make use of that stuff.
Yeah. So one of those sort of situations where you kind of looking around and realizing how fortunate you are to have those kind of facilities at your disposal.
Yeah, for sure. I know, like, particularly, like, if you get an injury, everyone's like, you just head there because it just, expedites the process so fast with seeing doctors and physical therapy and all of those things. But yeah, then for performance testing as well, pretty much if there's a test you want to do, you can ask to go do it. So,
did you have opportunity to have some sort of sports psychology there going on as well? Was that something that I think you mentioned in one of your articles?
Yeah.
Just kind of talk us through that. I know, like the article that you wrote back in February was kind of related more to previous spring, right? And kind of the start of 2022 and what you were feeling going into Yokohama and so on. But specifically talking about that, I guess I suppose, is it indicative of how difficult a subject it is to sometimes bring up and discuss and get to the bottom of, that article was written, in February, almost a full year after you were going through it and so on. And was the conversations with the sports psychologist that you had in Colorado Springs, was that something that made you realize that this was an important thing to write, to share, to get off your chest, and a good way of doing it as well?
Yeah. So last year, going into the year, Yokohama was my first race. And I put so much pressure on myself and wanted to do so well, and just completely panicked. We let it kind of like really just take over my life in the weeks leading up to the race, to the point that basically the week before I left, I was, essentially just like having a massive panic attack, struggling to, eat food, do any training at all. And
sorry to interrupt. Do you think that was partly due to that kind of longer intro to that season as well? Because that was that last year that Yoko was the first one of the year, and it was May, and so everything had kind of
I do think that was part of it. Because I've always gotten nervous for races, and like the quicker I race back to back, the more I'm just kind of feeling the flow. So I do think that was part of it. Also, like, we are going into the next Olympic cycle, which is something that, for years I'd kind of been like, oh, I'd love to be good in the next Olympic cycle. Then I kind of had planned to be my first year of doing like really as many of the WTS races as I could, and, wanting to have a good performance across the series. So it was kind of, I say like I race all the time, no race is that different, but it really felt like this is the kind of the next step. And, you want so badly to just, make a huge splash and be better than you've been before. And I did feel great in training, which almost made me more nervous, because I'm like, I feel like I can do, it's on me to just put out the race now. Right. So, I got, basically, I thought I wasn't going to Yokohama. It was so bad. I was like, I can't even get on a plane to go to a race. And, reached out to USAT, got in touch with some services, and started working with a psychologist who is in the spring. So I've seen her in person when I've been there. And it's, it's hard. Like, it's probably, I don't want to be this person who gets so nervous and stuff. But it's kind of just my load to bear in triathlon to some extent. Like, I've kind of realized it's a little bit who I am, and like accepting it can make it just feel so much lighter than kind of trying to fight it all the time.
Yeah, that feeling like you can't even get on an airplane and have a long distance flight, that must have just been horrible.
Yeah, it was, I can't describe how hard it was. And so then coming into this year, like, I was definitely like, oh, okay, how am I going to start the year again? But so I've got through one race, way better than last year. I won't say things are always perfect, but perfect's not the goal, as I get reminded by the psychologists and whatnot.
Is that's kind of one of the mantras, is it, that you just gotta, and maybe like harness that nervous energy? Is there anything in there that if you can kind of convert it into something that you can use?
Yeah, for sure. I'm always just like, I would love to just be that person who's like, oh, a race, whatever, so calm. And, but when I'm talking with people, or with like the psychologists and whatnot, like, I'm reminded, like, it does help racing, and like maybe that's part of like what you need to kind of get yourself going. And everyone falls in a little bit different place on that spectrum. But I think, like, the more I've shared myself and the more I've kind of paid close attention, I think more people, I don't know if they struggle with it as much as I do, but a lot of us are getting really nervous for these races. They're really hard, and there's such like split second little differences that make a huge impact in your overall result. So yeah, I think we really get on ourselves to have good performances and whatnot.
Were you surprised by the number of people that were then sort of coming out and saying, yeah, I'm with you, I totally get that? And I guess even people that you might have seen 100 times and thought, God, that is, they're cool as a cucumber every time. And
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and to be honest, like I feel like some people had said that to me, and I'm a person who struggled with nerves, and they're like, wow, like you're so like chill, or I've been told so many times by so many like coaches or people over the years, like that I'm so great under pressure and, always perform under pressure. And, oh, you just looked so nonchalant before the race. And yeah, under the surface, things can be so different than what it seems. But I guess putting on a good race face.
So was that, I don't know, writing that article, I would sort of, recommend anyone to read it as well. But was that a little bit of therapeutic, putting it out there? And it's a brave thing to put out there, and I guess articulating what that is making you feel to someone else is like almost the hardest part as well, is it?
Yeah, I mean, so like you said before, at this point it had been like almost a year since kind of like my worst spell, and it did take me that long to want to put it out there and feel like I could without like causing me to kind of relapse almost into those things. So, but yeah, I don't know why I felt like I wanted to. Like, I just felt like, I'm trying to kind of tell my story a little bit with the articles I've been writing, and I feel like that's just such a huge part of it, and something that a lot of people do relate to, and that we don't talk about a lot, but is happening frequently. So. Yeah, it was, I was nervous. I definitely like kind of thought about it for a few months before I actually was like, okay, yeah, I am going to put this out there. But yeah, I'm glad that I did.
Is it something that the psychologist would also refer to as something that can be good for you to work things out? Like, have you always been a bit of a writer or a note taker, or?
Yeah, I didn't actually talk to her about the fact that I was going to write about it.
I mean, Did she maybe suggest that, getting things down on paper is a good way of dealing with it?
Yeah. I enjoy writing. I've never been like a journaler per se, and that's definitely something like that's been, people always have said multiple times, like, yeah, you could try a little bit of journaling type of thing. And I don't, for whatever reason, I've never really taken to that hugely, but
it does go the same for whether you're starting a World's Triathlon Series race in Yokohama and it's the first race for 7 or 8 months and had this huge build up, or an age grouper, or just the tiniest local race, right? Those sort of levels of nerves and fear and all of that. Are there any like universal truths that have particularly kind of hit home with you that you would either recommend someone else try, or that just really helps you?
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to think about it. Like, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just that I've learned is like kind of just not letting things spiral. So, you like, if you're getting nervous or doubts or whatnot, and I'm told is like, it's like this too. Like, that's okay. I acknowledge that, I'm having this thought or this experience, and like I could move on. Like, it's just part of the process too, and it's not like the biggest thing weighing on you ever. So yeah, trying to not just like spiral one thought into, something that really takes over. But yeah, I think like for me, it's really just a matter of kind of getting out there. And like you said, like, the more often I race, the more comfortable I feel. Although I also am someone who loves like a long training block. So it's kind of like weighing the pros and cons of those things, In some ways, I felt like that long break last year was great because I had so much time to like kind of really build fitness in a way that we often don't with race schedules. So
yeah,
Yeah, it's always weighing the pros and cons.
Yeah. So it's actually, do you think it's more down to performance and you putting the pressure on converting that, you'd almost feel more comfortable just training and training and training, and it's the sort of shifting that into a race that kind of brings those feelings out rather.
Yeah.
Do you think, is it something that you've seen increasingly discussed by like USAT, by other athletes, mental health in general? Is it something that you feel, I don't know if you're kind of across the athlete committee too much and so on, but are these things that you think are discussed enough, or could be more? I'm sure always could be more, but
I think we're, talking about it more and more, I would say. I've only been in the elite sport for so many years, but it appears to me that, these topics are really kind of coming to light more and more. I think, a lot of athletes are working with sports psychologists, or at least have at some point, which I imagine is different than how things were a number of years ago. So Chelsea Sodaro just won the Ironman World Championships. She used to race with us in the short course racing. When I was getting started, I raced with her a ton. And yeah, so like she put out an article kind of ahead of this race she just did in Oceanside that was, I'm not going to say like it's similar to me, but again, like her mental health struggled a bit after Oceanside, and with the kind of pressures that she felt having been world champion, just kind of the opposite side of it from where I'm coming with, going into it. But I think it's becoming more and more talked about, and across women's and men's spectrums as well even.
Yeah. Is it too simplistic to say that like the first part of a race is the swim, and there's a lot of people that are genuinely kind of nervous about the physicality of that start element of a swim as well? Can that magnify the issue, do you think?
Yeah, that's interesting you bring that up, because I did used to be nervous about the swims in particular. Like, to be honest, I did not enjoy the first couple ITU swims I did. I was like, this is terrifying. Like, I don't even want to do this sport. And I've really come around to like feeling much more calm in the swim environment. But yeah, like, I used to be so jealous of the, Uber swimmers, and I'm like, at least you get to just start the race out so smooth. So I don't think that that's a part of what I've had recently. But it's one more thing to add on for sure.
Yeah. Do you feel it's gotten better? I know that, it's obviously been a major part of keeping on top of swim behavior and so on in the last season and a half. Do you feel like it's gotten better? Do you think there was like a real, there was obviously an issue that felt they needed to be sort of getting closer to the action and seeing what was going on, but yeah, how much of an issue is it?
Yeah. Race to race, it feels very different. And I think for me, kind of like my dislike of the swims at first, it wasn't so much that people were doing things they shouldn't, as much as just, the reality of putting 60 people on a start line and funneling down to a cone in 300 meters when we're all, can swim 100 within 5 seconds of each other. Like, it's just gonna be mayhem to some degree. And just like getting comfortable swimming, right next to one person, right next to another, hoping you can breathe, turning around the buoy at the right time and all that. Like, you really can't, maybe with a huge group you could practice it to some degree in a pool, but that's just something you have to kind of slowly get comfortable with over time. And I do, like, I've noticed such a big, like, every little bit further up you are in the swim, it's so much calmer just as the congestion comes more and more, towards the back of the race. It really does change the experience. But yeah, I think it's cool that like the athletes really did reach out and say, hey, we want this monitor more. And yeah, it's such a fine line though between, my arm accidentally went on that person versus I put my arm on that person. So yeah, it's a hard one, but I think it's for the better that we're trying to monitor it for sure.
Yeah, I guess the effort has to definitely be in there, but like you said, the the percentage likelihood of it happening as an accident is way higher than it happening deliberately, presumably, right? That kind of finding yourself in a situation. So, yeah, difficult. And like you said, from race to race, there's some. I mean, the Karlovy swim is a particularly tricky one, I think, isn't it? Like, there's a lot of turns in there.
Yeah, that one. If you don't get out well, you can just be. That one. You kind of swim around an island, and it's so narrow on the back end. You're just literally like out of water. Which is kind of hilarious. I know some people have been like, be careful. You don't want to like run your knee into a rock when you're kicking. I love the Karlovy course though. So I think everyone should go.
And the Huatulco one, so it was last year, wasn't it, that you came off on the bike there? I mean, you've had your fair share of bad luck over the seasons, haven't you? But that was another kind of going in as race number one as well, right?
Yeah. That was my first time going in as number one, which... very cool. Also kind of feels like a bit of pressure. But I had high hopes for that race, to be honest. And, I felt like I had a really good swim and I started the bike, very aggressive at the front. And I felt like it was going to be a good day, and then hit a corner, heard a huge pop, and that was kind of that. Yeah.
What are as far as you're concerned, the sort of benefits and negatives of putting too many specific goals and targets throughout your season? If you... at the end of 2023, for example, what are you hoping to tick off? And I mean, you gotta set some pretty ambitious, lofty targets, right, to keep at it. But at the same time, like you said, it's the nature of the sport that things don't go to plan.
Yeah. That's actually like figuring out where to set my goals is something I've actually started to struggle with a little more lately. Because this first couple of years, like the goal was like, do a WTS, finish in the top half of a World Cup, like kind of things that I was capable of achieving, and like were clearly, I did the next step. Whereas now I feel like I'm in a position where, the lines are smaller. I can't say, I just want to jump 10 positions in a race this year, because realistically, that's not. I mean, maybe it'll happen, but I think it would be too lofty of a type of goal to set for myself, and I would just get, thumbed down to not hit it. So, yeah, I'm kind of struggle with like where do I put my goals in? Really, I think for this year in particular, we do have some big races with the test event and the grand final. So, like having a good performance, getting into those races to begin with, because our team is really large, and then having a good performance there, like that would definitely be, all goals checked for the year, I think. But aside from that, it's really kind of just consistency and just kind of getting that feeling that like, yeah, I have it improved a little bit each race. And yeah, there's some races kind of like Huatulco where I want to come in with these big goals, but you also have to have the bigger oversight of kind of giving yourself time to let it happen. If it doesn't happen at this one, there's a couple more to try. And
did you watch Oceanside? Are do you like to kind of try and keep a broad upkeep on what's going on in the sport? And is that something that you kind of got half an eye on as well?
Yeah, a little bit. Like I'll watch the world champs every year, pay attention to what happened in the PTO races. So I watched, like, I think I came home from a swim and my boyfriend had Oceanside playing. So I kind of saw the run, basically. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just interesting, isn't it? Like there's always the discussion about how the races are presented and coverage and so on, and there's it seems like every race there's things that people are focusing on that have improved and things that haven't, and it's a notoriously tricky sport to perhaps be able to kind of broadcast it in a engaging way for extended periods of time.
Yeah, for sure. I think we, aside from kind of the world champs, I don't think we really watch any of the long course races start to finish. I don't think he'd been playing it much longer from before I walked in. So I think he might have seen a little bit of the bike ride too this past weekend. But yeah, we watch so before I raced the WTS series, I watched all of those races. Now that I'm kind of like going to them all, if I miss one, I may or may not watch it. It kind of depends what the time zone is. And, now that I'm racing myself, 10 plus times a year, kind of like, well, I don't know if I need to spend my next weekend also watching a triathlon online, but I like to keep up with the results, at least if I don't tune in live. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting seeing like a Leo Berger, isn't it? Kind of come in, talking to Vincent Luis, and he was saying that he didn't think many people would be sort of trying to slot in those longer distance races with Paris coming up and but then Leo saying, well, actually, he finds it, as he did with Lanzarote last year, that, around this kind of time to put in that sort of distance racing kind of really helped and so on. So I don't know if it's just happening more as an integrated thing, or if it did always happen before, but it's just like the level of results have got better. But it definitely felt like maybe Christian and Gustav had slightly sort of changed the Rubicon, and people were kind of almost laughing at their ambitions in the sport before, as they started, weren't they? Like, it was kind of, oh yeah, let's see how this goes on. But
yeah,
they converted it in style.
Yeah, I feel like they were kind of the ones to really show like, hey, we can have a lot of success if we jump over potentially, and got people excited. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of like, oh wow, Leo really wants to do this, like going into the season and whatnot. But I remember hearing, I think Nicola Spirig, like before she won the Olympics or one of the years where she medaled, she had done a half Ironman like 2 weeks before or something like that. So I think, yeah, like depending on the training, some people they benefit with that kind of like long kind of threshold session. And coming off the training that we do, you can still perform very well at that distance. It's something I'm definitely interested in. Like we said before, I feel like my endurance is kind of my strong suit in triathlon over my top speed. And I feel like I work so hard to, for instance, like the sprints out of U-turns on the bike, like I practice so much to be able to come out of the U-turn with everyone. And yeah, so things like that I've worked at a lot. So I guess I've been interested in the long course racing. The more I get into ITU, the more that gets put on the back burner. But we'll see. Some year I want to give it a try as well myself, and we'll see what happens.
Interesting. Is it so coming out of those U-turns and not having or being able to maintain a better speed out, is that something that you think kind of earlier on in your career was taking a lot out of your legs, if on reflection?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, so like as you jump up the level of racing, those little things become more and more necessary. So I did have a couple years where maybe the racing wasn't quite as full on in these little aspects, like every little U-turn or the first 100 meters of the swim. So I had some years to build into it, but yeah, it's something that I, all those little sprints throughout, like, being fast in transition, running, the U-turns on the bike, like any little, all these little segments, accelerations that we do. It's something that I've really worked at a lot because that top speed didn't come naturally to me when I first started. I think like the first time I had a really good WTS swim was in Hamburg in 2020. And I hit the first buoy in the swim and I was so tired. I was like, I don't know if I can finish this swim, let alone the rest of the race. Like, I'm just going to try to keep turning my arms over here. Because I just had to go to like that absolute next level to kind of be there. And yeah, so that's something like just working on top speed all the time in my training. Just kind of, the way we do it is we do it in very short bursts. So I might do like a longer set, but like throughout it, always sprinkling in a little bit of top speed here and there.
Yeah. And then it's a case of finding those little windows within the race, is it, where you can kind of build a little recovery in, like if you've just hammered yourself in the Hamburg swim and you kind of have those.
Yeah, I mean, the more you get into the races, the more it can become just this automatic thing, and like learning those little spots where you can recover, and being like, oh, I know whose wheel I'm on, so I expect how they're going to take this next turn, and I can kind of like foresee what's about to happen, things like that. When you've been racing longer, just you can find those spots to relax a little bit here and there when you think you can, and then other times where you kind of know something's about to happen and I can't relax at this moment. Yeah.
Or indeed in the eliminator format that you were describing again on your slow twitch and that kind of leg wobble, even as you're back on the pontoon from the previous race. And
okay, so I just want to say, like, when I came into triathlon, everything was Olympic distance, right? I remember when I first started, I was doing my Conti Cups, listening to podcasts where there was going to be some sprints introduced, and people were like, how are we going to train for the sprint distance at a WTS? All we've done is Olympic. How's that going to change? And now as I make my way into the WTS, now we even have the eliminators thrown at us. So it's like, as I said before, like this top end speed, I feel like is somewhere that I think I can get there, but it's just like I'm working so hard to do that. And the eliminator for me is very, very difficult. The 2K run is just, I feel like my legs cannot turn over any faster for the entire 2K.
Right.
And I know a lot of athletes I race, they love it. And they're like, this is what I always wanted in ITU, is to go like this to this level of speed. For me, I kind of like the Olympic distance, but I've been doing my best to keep up with all of it.
And Arena Games finals this weekend in London as well. So yeah, another little twist.
Yeah, I've yet to do one of those. We'll see.
Yeah. So yeah, well, where will we see you next, putting it all into practice? What's the first one in the schedule?
Hopefully Yokohama and Cagliari. And since I think we said earlier, like a lot of travel from the US, so we're hoping to kind of like roll those into one trip and camp in between. So should be a fun little time with the US team. So that's the hope.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, Yokohama's going to be a cracker on Triathlon Live, of course. We're very much looking forward to seeing you out there and seeing what the second race of the season has in store.
Thank you.
Nice one. Thanks a lot, Erika.